This is Tyler, your antisocial critic and the host of the AntiSocial Network, your number one source for anachronistic conversations online. Come join us each week to hear opinions from some of the best voices discussing entertainment, politics, religion, and modern life on the internet today, most of which you've never heard of, but I have. Joining us tonight is Tyrone Barnes, a fellow writer at Geeks Under Grace, who, actually the first one I've had the opportunity to talk to on this show. I've met one other Geeks Under Grace writer in person, but this is the first time I've actually had to be ability to talk face to face with anyone. How's it going?
Better than I deserve. It's a good Friday, and I'm enjoying it. Yourself?
It's holding up as well. Never as productive as you want to be, but that's life. So.
Of course.
So how long have you written for Geeks Under Grace then? I've been there for about 3 years, I think, now.
I think I'm about the same. I remember distinctly the catalyst of my coming on board. I wrote this impromptu review for Moana when that film released shortly in theaters, and I just spun out this like 3 or 4 paragraph long review on the Geeks Under Grace Facebook group. And obviously it impressed somebody, and they said, hey, why are you not writing for our website? This is really good. And so I took their word for it, and here I am now.
Well, there you go. Was Victoria the editor still then, or was it someone else? I'm forgetting who was the...
I'm pretty sure it was Robert Miller who reached out to me, of all people.
Okay.
Initially. But I do think Victoria was on the editor's board at the time, though.
Okay. I think when I reached out, because I remember when I reached out, I think it was like, I'd heard of Geeks Under Grace years before, because and obviously the website's claim to fame is that we did the Scott Cawthon interviews back in the day. But so at some point when I was trying to get famous and decided I want to become a rich writer too, so I thought I'll reach out to Geeks Under Grace. I'm sure there's a plentiful path to wealth and riches there. But yes. Yeah, obviously, and I'm rolling in it, but... So I ended up reaching out like the summer of 2017, and they said, "Oh, cool." And they said, "Well, I'll get back to you." Victoria said, "I'll get back to you when there's an opening," and it didn't end up. And I don't think I ended up starting to write there till about November of that year.
Okay.
And then I just kind of took off and just kept writing. Didn't stop.
Yes. Yeah, you just don't stop after a while.
especially the way I do it. I mean, at times I feel like I'm just sending review requests to multiple departments like every other day. I feel bad for people that have to we had to edit some of the stuff I put up.
Oh goodness, yes.
I mean my review of the Iliad just went up this week, and it's like.
Really?
Yeah, it's like 12,000, or it's like 10,000 words long or something like that. Like, I don't even remember. It's way longer than it definitely should be for our audience, but I just felt like if it didn't feel complete, I had to keep going.
Yeah. Yes, of course.
So what is your area of expertise then in terms of what you tend to focus your views on?
Well, I did see this as an opportunity to help bridge the gap between what I would call the American Christian community and the arts, because I've recognized for a very long time there's a great disconnect between the two. I'm sure you know as well as I do that when it comes to Christians and the arts, at least today, their brains are best left unstirred. It's if you want to talk about how we damage the witness, I think that is one field in which we do that more effectively and more inadvertently than anywhere else.
More belligerently too.
Yes, in a way. Definitely in a way there. It's a real shame because, once upon a time, centuries ago, it was people of the faith who were the greatest patrons and practitioners of the arts that the world had ever known. I'm an art school graduate. And during that time when we studied art history, I was like, wow, people who share my faith were producing the best art in the world. What happened? And there are a number of theories as to exactly what happened, and people far more studied of these matters than I have written entire books about it. But when I came into it, my area of expertise was trying to bring a perspective to cinema and television, and probably most specifically animation, because that's where I earned my degree in. A perspective that was definitely Christian influenced, but was still sophisticated and committed to the excellence of the discipline. not as an area of, how should I say, Southern Baptist style evangelism, but as an opportunity to attest this as a disciple. And that's exactly what I tried to do. And I guess time will tell whether or not I've done that successfully.
Sure. What else do you do outside of the website then? You say you do animation. Do you work anywhere, or what is your focus?
I'm an artist. So
well, yeah.
I do illustration. Yes, I'm just a general freelance artist. I do illustration. I do concept art. I do character design. I'm actually working with a friend of mine who lives in Arkansas, who's a game development director. He basically took me on as his unofficial art director for one of his projects. It's currently in sort of a hiatus, but I'm still working on it because it's a great portfolio piece all the same. Yeah, that's the brunt of what I do outside of writing this, because this is basically pro bono work.
Yeah, that's and I've never, I joke about the idea of getting rich writing for Geeks Under Grace, but it's very fulfilling. I'll give them that.
Yes, it has its perks.
They especially, like, for whatever reason, they've never really exercised any level of editorial control over what I've written, which is good. Really? because I've written some out there stuff.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
I mean, any other Christian website would probably be like, you want to write what about Game of Thrones? But their user base is like, oh, great, we love that show. I'm like, okay, this either Geeks Under Grace is way too liberal in their Christianity, or they just trust me way too much. And either way, I'm gonna disabuse that. So,
yeah, true enough. When I wrote my article on Big Mouth, the Netflix TV series, I was, it took a while to get my eyebrows back from the back of my head after they said, yeah, okay, we'll let you do that.
Oh my goodness. What did you, I haven't read that. What did you write about it?
I did write pretty explicitly about the content, first of all, and I do think the editor took some creative liberties about not being too on the nose with some of the content. But I wanted to be frank, not vulgar, but frank. And even with the edits, I still think I came across as very to the point. And I don't think I sugarcoated anything. And there was a disclaimer that, hey, this is a show with a lot of sexual content discussed in it. Read at your own discretion. But they did, for the most part, let me write what I wanted to write. And I'm definitely happy with that's one of the articles that I can say I'm most happy turned out the way that it did, because it seems to just flow for me naturally. Unlike a lot of my other reviews where it seems like I'm just straining to figure out the right words and the right sentences to write.
Sure. What did you end up writing about it, in positive or negative? Was it just...
I would say it was mostly a negative review. I didn't write it so much in the format of a review. It was more of an article and just a reflection on the topics it was addressing. It's a show that, at least on the surface, deals with adolescence in a general way, and all of the difficulties and complexities that come with that. But it approaches it from a very, I would say, nihilistic perspective. No, very much so. I mean, the ending musical number, because, spoiler, there is an ending musical number in this TV show.
Yeah.
And it's very nihilistic. It basically just spells out its nihilism in no uncertain terms. And I took serious problem with that, because that's so run-of-the-mill with what constitutes quote-unquote adult animation. You look at shows like Family Guy or South Park or Rick and Morty and other shows of that ilk, they're all nihilistic. That's just standard operating procedure for this kind of genre or subgenre of animation, and I didn't like that so much. I did like how creatively it addressed the various layers and dimensions of adolescence, like the element of the hormone monsters that are prevalent in the show. I thought was actually a really interesting take, like personifying the raging hormones that go through a person's body when they meet that transition from childhood into adulthood. That's an interesting take, but I do wish that they had handled it, I would say, in a more mature manner, or at least whatever mature and sophisticated elements could have come with that depiction showed more to the forefront than just more crassness and vulgarity that we get every single day just turning on in the Adult Swim.
Yeah, I mean, I when it comes to like nihilism in adult programming, that's not really surprising to me anymore. I mean, that hasn't been surprising since the 90s. I mean, no. There was a time when The Simpsons felt transgressive, and now that's just normal.
Yeah.
That's
Simpsons is kind of meek compared to everything else out there.
yeah, which I don't know how to feel about that because it's one of those things where I'm like, I'm glad that we don't portray The Simpsons like it's the most transgressive thing in the world, but at the same time, everything that's followed since has been progressively worse. And
Yeah.
I haven't watched Big Mouth. I've had a few people tell me I should, but I've seen like all the most intense scenes of it. And my takeaway wasn't necessarily that it was nihilistic so much as it just was graphic and its openness about the subject matter. Like,
Yes.
I mean, was it a kid show that was directly addressing issues of like masturbation and pregnancy, or was it an adult show about kids who are doing those things? And either one of those is very sketchy, and Netflix has just been dancing on the sketchy line for years now. So it's just another one of those like, what are you doing with this, and why are you doing it? Because I do not understand what the point of this is.
Yeah, actually, Netflix is probably the only platform that would have tolerated a program like this. And I do remember explicitly, like the final lines of the first season, they addressed the fact that good thing this is animated, otherwise they could be brought up on charges of child pornography.
You know, I actually respect that, but but still, that's kind of messed up. But
yeah, that just, especially now with that whole cuties fiasco that we had last year. Yeah, like you said, Netflix is kind of dancing on a knife edge, and you can be said that they're cutting their heels pretty deep at this point. So, and considering the fact that Big Mouth has had at least one new season after that, which I'm understanding gets even more graphic.
Like, I don't mind this. Like, I don't care if this crap shows up on Adult Swim, because Adult Swim, that stuff's supposed to be edgy just to be edgy. Like,
honestly, even Adult Swim is pretty meek compared to Big Mouth. There's some stuff in Big Mouth that even Adult Swim wouldn't show.
Yeah, well, obviously, Adult Swim still has to abide by like television rules, so it can't go complete like pornography or anything like that. But they certainly let themselves go dark thematically, and especially and. I'm more fine with them doing like crass sexual humor and stuff there, just because I know kids aren't watching it. Like,
yeah.
And I mean, I grew up in the age of the internet, so I have that kind of like laugh at nihilism because it's funny bone in me. So I'll watch stuff like Xavier and just be like, what the heck am I watching? But beyond that, I'm just like, Netflix needs to cordon this stuff off, otherwise it looks like they're just selling to a really messed up audience.
Yes. I mean, understandably, this is not available if you go through a kid's account on Netflix, obviously.
Well, that's good.
But still, again, like I said, they're dancing on a knife's edge about these kinds of things, and I can definitely understand people saying, you know what, I'm done with Netflix over this. I have only seen the first season of Big Mouth. I never bothered to watch after that. Because the first season left such a bad taste in my mouth. He said, you know what, I've had my fill. I don't think I need to see any more of this in order for it to be gratifying.
Yeah, and I just haven't watched a lot of the stuff that has been, like, you hear a lot of the stuff, like the trans children's show and cuties, and, like, I just, part of me is like, I should watch it to understand it or review it, but I just never particularly had the taste for it. Didn't Netflix do like that First Temptation of Christ movie a couple of years ago too? I know it was like, you know what I'm talking about?
I know there was a movie some years ago or some decades ago called The Last Temptation of Christ.
Well, that was an 80s Scorsese movie.
Yes.
But there was like a gay like joke version called The First Temptation of Christ, and I think it was a Netflix movie.
Hearing about that.
Because I remember Juliana was talking about wanting to do that for Geeks Under Grace, and I was encouraging her to do it because my general thought of the website is that our mandate should be to review everything that addresses Christianity in the culture right now,
right?
And especially the edgy stuff, because we should be on that. We should be on it and talking about it. But we never ended up putting up a review for it.
Oh, good. Yeah, I do think I remember what you're talking about now.
Yeah, do you think it would be good or bad for us to have reviewed it? I don't know.
Did they?
We never did, because Juliana was going to be the one to do it.
I think they should. Yeah, I agree. I definitely think they should. Like you said, as disciples, that is something we should be addressing. I don't care whether it's depicting our faith positively, negatively, as a parody, as a satire, or as anything else for that matter. We definitely should be on that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the projects I just pitched over to the TV department was doing a... Have you seen Has Been Hotel on YouTube?
Yes, I have.
I want to do. I think that Geeks Under Grace should address that and the series that have come both the TV shows that have come out of that in some way, because obviously both of them are nominally supposed to have some sort of Christian moral view behind them, but they're also.
Well, I know Hell of a Boss. What's the other one?
Has Been Hotel.
Yeah, Has Been Hotel and Hell of a Boss. Okay.
Yeah.
I think Has Been Hotel is still just that pilot episode, but Hell of a Boss has like 3 episodes now?
Yeah, 3 episodes in a pilot, and Has Been Hotel was picked up by A24 for an actual television run, so...
Nice.
Which I've never heard of a web series got picked up by an actual film studio, so...
First time for everything.
Oh yeah, I'm very excited to see where that ends up going, but... I
actually really enjoyed that show.
Oh, I do.
I enjoy it immensely.
I had a friend of mine who mostly knows me as like the gentle Christian guy in her life, and she came over and we hung out and we watched that show, and she's like, Tyler, I didn't know you'd watch stuff like this. This is the kind of stuff I watch normally. I'm like, so but it's one of those things where it's definitely edgy, but I think that the website should address it, and I'm trying to come up with an article kind of exploring how that show approaches religious ideas, because obviously it's not Christian in any sort of more meaningful way, but it does have some interesting moral dimensions to it, so I'm kind of curious to kind of break them down and see what there is there.
I honestly think it uses like the superficial trappings of the Christian worldview of the afterlife in the same way that something like Neon Genesis Evangelion did. Like, well, it just uses it because it's kind of cool.
Has Been Hotel seems to be approaching the issue of salvation. And...
Yes. And redemption. Yes, that is true.
And I think that, more than anything else, is probably where I would tackle it from, because the series hasn't really explained how it's going to approach that yet, or what it's ultimately going to build to. But I think that there's something interesting in the fact that series is so kind of, not necessarily self-loathing, but it's very honest about the fact that sin is a bad thing. Although, I don't think it really understands what sin is. It just seems to say... Really. It just seems to say, like, oh, people go to hell because they sin. Okay, what's sin? But then it portrays like everything from sex to drugs to all that stuff is fun. So, I mean, maybe there's something Scorsese-esque about that, where it's being honest about the fact that sin is fun. But at the same time, I don't know what moral dimension it's tackling it from, and I'm gonna be really curious to see whether or not it actually ends up hitting that from a reasonable perspective, or if it ends up just completely like abdicating whether or not these characters can be redeemed or not, or how.
Well, now that you mention that, I can say that a lot of his flourishes and his content is surprisingly conservative in a lot of ways. The fact that, you know, they're bold enough to say that gay porn stars go to hell. I don't think too many people on another side of the aisle from us would take that so willingly. And speaking specifically of a Hell of a Boss, that was the last place where I would ever expect to find what is, for all intents and purposes, a healthy representation of a traditional married couple. I'm not gonna lie. It's like, yeah,
it's really wholesome.
It is a wholesome depiction of a married couple, and it works on so many levels. This is the last place where I would expect to find that, but it's there. And I think in the last Hell of a Boss episode, they managed to do this thing of an unrequited love interest with a girl chasing after a guy who turns out to be unrequited. And they did not do the whole he was gay all along shit that I've seen 1,002 times in other places. They didn't do that. So you may be onto something there, that there may be a conservative underpinning to this show that maybe we're just not giving enough attention to.
Which character was the one that didn't turn out to be gay all along?
Some bouncer that the wolf girl was.
Oh yeah. He.
What? Yeah, you rewatched the last episode of Hell of a Boss.
I did.
That entire subplot is about that.
I actually wouldn't have picked up on that, but yeah, I could definitely have seen that. Oh, he turns out to be gay as the punchline, but
yeah, we seen that 1,002 times, but no, they didn't do that here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the show's kind of ripping off like Office Space and kind of like the sitcom setup, so I don't think it wants to go completely like cliche. Otherwise, it knows it's gonna fall apart. But yeah, I don't know much about the woman that runs it. I know she.
Oh, I've been following her work for years.
Okay, I don't know about her like ideological leanings. Like I know that there's like 20 people that like harass every single one of her comments and claim she's transphobic for some reason, but it's probably just like as far as I can tell, it's just like some dumb controversy from like years ago when she was a teenager and she put up some dumb fan art or something. But
Probably.
nowadays you don't get forgiven for anything, so
Of course
it's
not. You know,
it,
moralistic indignation is a way of life of these people, so they're just going to keep on trucking.
it is their god. So yeah, obviously.
Basically, yeah.
But yeah, I do want I haven't quite figured out how to tackle that for Geeks Under Grace, but that is something I want to write sooner than later, just because I think that there's something to it. I actually did try. I tried to reach out to her on Patreon to see if I could get an interview with her, but she never replied. So
That would be nice.
yeah, I have a pretty good record of getting people to say yes for interviews. So we'll see. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I almost got the guy who wrote Willy's Wonderland to do a interview for us, but he. Have you heard of that?
No, I can't say.
That's the Five Nights at Freddy's ripoff starring Nicolas Cage.
Oh, okay. That's all I need to know about that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's kind of done in the style of his recent movies where he's just playing like a complete psychopath, and he just walks into this scenario and it turns into like this bizarre horror comedy. So it wasn't a great film, but I think the guy ended up like saying some comment. The guy who wrote it like reached out to me on Twitter and wrote some comment under when I said I was seeing the movie. So I'm like, you want to be interviewed? And they ended up saying, "Oh, I can't. I'm too busy right now. But thanks for offering." But we'll see. Maybe. And I keep reaching out to people and getting weird yeses. So.
Okay. Well, Godspeed to you. I'm excited to hear that.
I freaking interviewed the Charles Bronson impersonator for our website.
Oh wow.
Did you ever read that one or?
I can't say I've read it, but no, I don't think I've read any of the interviews that you've managed to chalk up.
Yeah, there's a guy who he's like a Hungarian actor that looks exactly like Charles Bronson, and he got picked up by like the straight to video movie scene, and he's done like 6 cheap westerns and action movies, kind of mimicking the acting style of Charles Bronson.
Okay.
And I got to talk to him, and nice guy. I probably can't review any more of his movies because it would be a conflict of interest, and most of them aren't good. But that's but it was fun talking to him. He seems like a really chill guy. So, and I also got to talk to the Babylon Bee host at one point. So
Awesome.
I have no idea how that worked out, but Kyle, for whatever reason, he came back and did like 2 or 3 video game reviews for us. So
Really?
yeah, look up our review of Mario Aces, the Switch game. He did that review, and I think he did 1 or 2 others. So
Nice.
so yeah, we technically have a sister website in the Babylon Bee, not in any sort of official or professional capacity. Just in we seem to be on good friendly terms with them. So
Their people know our people.
kind of, yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, that's the way you get up in the world, is you make friends and then the friends pat you on the back. So
Exactly. Surround yourself with people who are better than you in ways that you want to be better.
and eventually they'll pay you to be as good as they are. Well, it takes a long time to do that. What's the line that says you don't get anywhere in your career till like 12 years into it or something like that? Or
Something like that. That makes sense.
yeah, I mean, I started writing in 2013, so I got another 4 years of grind, and then the millions start pouring in. So who knows?
Yeah. Godspeed. I don't know. My time has been divided with writing and everything else that I'm doing. I'm trying to get back into trying to strengthen my freelance business. I'm trying to start making web comics again. I'm trying to put together a pitch idea for an eventual animated series if God sees it fit to be so. I'm actually working right now with a business course to reach out to Kickstarter projects to try to put myself out there and get some more high-paying job opportunities than what I'm used to in my freelance business. So a lot of things happening this year for me that I'm trying to develop. So much so that my thing with writing reviews and articles with the website has been pushed to the margins as a result.
Well,
I still do it.
You got a couple.
I just finished my last review just earlier today. I just finished writing the draft. I still got to finalize it and post it. But
What did you review?
Earwig and the Witch.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's the newest movie from Studio Ghibli, and it really hurts to have to say that once you actually look at the movie itself.
I think I shared my the review I wrote for Cultural Review on that. Did you see that, or?
I don't think I saw that. No.
Yeah, I saw it. It's a movie.
Yeah, it's a movie. In the loosest sense of that word. At times, it almost seems like an overly long college thesis project in some ways.
It feels like a college 3D animator imitating Studio Ghibli at times.
Yes, but understanding that this was directed by Hayao Miyazaki's son.
Well, that's not a sign of quality. If like, I haven't seen Tales of Earthsea, but I've heard nothing but terrible things about that one. So, just being related to Miyazaki does not inherently make him talented. So
at the same time, he did direct From Up on Poppy Hill, and that's a legitimately good movie.
That's good. I mean, the Ghibli films kind of come in tiers, and I'd say that's like one of the ones that's pretty good but not great. Mm-hmm. I don't know how you'd rank it, but
I would definitely consider it probably on the same level as, say, Ponyo, perhaps.
Was Ponyo Miyazaki, or was that someone else?
Ponyo is Miyazaki.
Okay. I know a couple of people that really like that one, but that's one of the few I haven't actually seen yet, just because I've heard really mixed things about it.
That's understandable. It's basically his take on The Little Mermaid. You know, that's the long and short of it. And I personally liked it a lot. I'm always down for anything that has to deal with sea life.
Sure.
That was my fascination as a child, and that still sticks with me somewhere in here now that I'm 32. And I thought he did, you know, all of his visual flourishes and panache are on sale there. It's not Spirited Away level, but it's still in the wheelhouse of that. So yeah, definitely give it a look. I would recommend it.
But yeah, I was dang disappointed by Earwig. I mean, I at times there were like a couple of details where I thought that it was getting it right, but like anytime the Mandrake showed up, I thought that was kind of, his character felt very Ghibli-esque, but
yeah, almost. It's like if No Face were an angry existentialist, would be what Mandrake would be. But even all he delivered was occasional visual flourishes of what could be greatness if they flesh him out a bit.
Yeah,
but it never went anywhere.
Yeah, it's weird the way the movie just dropped off the way it did too. Like,
it did. I mean, granted, From Up on Poppy Hill ended in a similar abrupt manner, but that was actually earned. Here, it's not earned. This movie went nowhere really, really fast, and for a very long time.
Like, that last 5 minutes where it's like the character like explaining how life has changed for her after 6 months of being with the family, that stuff was legitimately pretty good. Like, I thought, like, okay, this movie's kind of got a point to it now. The characters are evolving. They're at a place, and then they have the last minute plot twist that goes nowhere, and then the movie just drops, and then
the movie ends. That's the end of the movie. What should be like the second act at the very least is the end of the movie.
Yeah, I don't know why they cut off what feels like it should have been like the movie's big reveal, but
yeah. But it wasn't even a big reveal. You learned like in the middle of that slog of a second act who her mother was. So
yeah, but it would have been interesting to see how everyone reacts to that moment, to that reveal. But the fact that they just took away what could have been interesting just to end the movie, it's just so bizarre.
It's really, really sad. In a sense, I've heard some reviewers say that in a way, Earwig and the Witch could be considered somewhat autobiographical for Godot, because it's his way of showing how he has failed to connect with his father in a lot of ways. Because personally, you can make an entire documentary on this. There does seem to be a very strained parental relationship between Hayao and his son Godot. Anytime Godot tries to do anything, his father at best gives him like an underhanded compliment. Like when Hayao talked about Tales from Earthsea, he said, "Well, it was made honestly, so it's good." And, those were his exact words.
Oh my gosh.
But those were his exact words. Like, that's like the most passive-aggressive compliment you could have given Hayao. And I'm sure that's going to do a lot of good for your son's self-esteem from here going on. But, of course, I had to dedicate a good chunk of my review talking about how incredibly poor the CGI animation production was. That was his worst feature, aside from the thoroughly unlikable characters, because every character in the movie was completely unlikable.
The cat was okay.
The animation production was terrible. I haven't seen CGI animation this wooden since like the early 90s from a major studio. I thought we had gotten past that, so Goro and his team showed fully well that they had little to no experience with this technology, little to no experience with this form of animation. I wish they had just stuck with their traditional hand-drawn motif, because that's what they're good at. That's what the house is known for. They're one of the few houses keeping that style of animation alive. Please don't bury us in the grave of just another generic dated CGI slog.
Well, I had in my review, I had two thoughts on why they did that. First being, I think they killed their 2D division when they shot after when Marnie was there, because that was officially their last film internally when they made that, and then the studio technically shut down, and then they financed the Red Turtle, which was out of a French studio, and all of the animators went over to Studio Ponack and made Mary and the Witch's Flower.
Right.
So unless they want to like license a Ghibli film from Studio Ponack, which would be interesting, I think they didn't have a choice partially. And my other assumption was that Earwig was a sacrificial lamb, so that they could get the CGI technology working. So what? Because I know Miyazaki is coming back for one more film for the 4th time, and
6th, 7th time.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that part of this was just, okay, we're gonna put Goro on this on the first film, get the technology rolling, and then by the time we get to Hideo's work, it will have an idea how to use it. And
yeah, maybe. So he was the guinea pig in this experiment. That's depressing, but understandable.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen nothing to confirm that, but that's my assumption, just based on the fact that they put Goro in charge of the first film back. I mean, like, I'm sure they knew what was going to happen, but I'm sure they also was like, well, we can't afford to bring back the animation style, so.
True. I mean, it was a direct-to-TV production.
Really?
Yes, that's one thing I learned from my research. It was not originally slated for a theatrical release. It was slated to be, like I said, just a direct-to-TV production, so that's probably why it was so cheap.
That sounds... That I did not know that. That actually makes a lot of sense in hindsight.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that doesn't change the fact that it's not good.
Well, yeah. I mean, I know the movie technically got like an HBO release. Like, I think wasn't that how it got? Like, I actually saw it in a theater that was socially distanced, but I'm sure if I saw it at home, I'd be a little bit more forgiving to it. But I actually saw it in a movie theater, so. So I'm like, I'm seeing all this on the big screen. Yeah, so I
saw it on my iPad.
This is the way Scorsese intended. So
yeah, exactly. Oh, that's bad. Yeah, I feel bad for you, son. That's good. That had to have been painful. And also, as an aside, Mary and the Witch's Flower was not very good either.
No, it looks good, but there's there's nothing to it. Like it just.
No, not really. All style, no substance. That was basically that.
I mean, that was the core of my review. Was just there's no Studio Ghibli without Miyazaki.
No, there isn't.
At the end of the day, if you lose him, the whole studio goes up in smoke. So
basically, he's better than Uncle Walt. A lot of people, when I was getting my degree in animation, we often said that Hayao Miyazaki was the Japanese reincarnation of Walt Disney. He's better than Walt Disney. He's more essential to his studio's image than Walt Disney was to Disney's image, because Disney still carried on very strongly after he passed away in the late 60s.
Yeah.
Mind you, they had their dark period, but when they came back in '89 with The Little Mermaid, they came back hard. But the same cannot be, I don't think the same could be said with regard to Studio Ghibli and Miyazaki. When he finally leaves us, like, that studio's legacy is basically a Pandora's box at that point.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people, like, whenever, like, a new animation director comes out of Japan, everyone's like, is he going to be the next Miyazaki? Is he going to be the next? And I keep having to say, no, he's not going to be the next Miyazaki. You're not going to get another one. Stop asking him to be that way. No. I mean, the guy that made Your Name, freaking, like, he's being declared the next Miyazaki, and at one point he had to beg people to stop seeing his film because he didn't like the fact that Your Name was the most successful film in Japanese history.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. That's Makoto Shinkai, I think, is the one you're talking about.
Yeah, and he's very good, but he is
Excellent.
not. Yeah, but he's a very different artist, and I think the more people compare every single artist to Miyazaki, the more it's gonna just completely flatten that entire medium.
Yeah, it's gonna collapse in on itself. He doesn't need to be the next Miyazaki. He's the first Makoto Shinkai, and Makoto Shinkai is a great visionary.
Yeah,
I've seen a lot of his other films. What was that? 5 centimeters per second.
Yeah,
that was a really touching romance story. And again, like you said, Your Name is the most successful film of any sort in Japanese history, and for good reason. It wholly deserves the praise that it's got. And didn't he do another one just like last year?
I haven't seen it, but it was called Weathering with You.
Weathering with You. Yeah, I haven't seen that one either, but that's definitely on my watch list. But even outside of that, the Demon Slayer movie came out recently, and that's also like breaking all kinds of box office records in Japan. So it's not like once Miyazaki goes, all of animation goes with him. There are other visionaries with just as much panache and just as much something valuable to offer to the medium as Miyazaki did. Miyazaki's had his time, and he's about to finish up his time, it seems, for the fifth, sixth, seventh time. But there are others waiting in the wings, and we ought to give them their fair shot on their own terms, and they deserve to be judged on their own terms. Not in comparison to Miyazaki, but for what they are in and of themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't met people from Japan who actually have those opinions, so I'm sure they have more balanced opinions about that, but obviously, I think it's probably different for Americans, since Americans tend to don't have as deep a connection to the full spectrum of Japanese entertainment as we do. So
maybe. I mean, I do have a friend who lives in Japan right now, and he actually did manage to see the Demon Slayer movie in theaters, and everything he's telling me, I held him like at a knife point to say, do not give me any spoilers, but is it good? And he said, it's marvelous. It's absolutely marvelous. And that just made me salivate all the more. When are we going to get a stateside release for the Demon Slayer movie? We need it.
Oh my goodness.
That show, no, that was easily my favorite new anime of 2019. Yeah, it came out 2019. And the fact that it is like one of the most popular franchises in Japan right now is not surprising. It's extremely popular in Japan, and the movie itself, like I said, is breaking box. It's right up in there with Spirited Away and Your Name as one of the highest grossing animated films to come out of Japan right now. And I'm sure you remember, I don't know if you watch anime as religiously as I do, but when episode 19 of Demon Slayer released, it was kind of a shot heard around the world. It wound up being the #1 trending topic on Twitter, which almost never happens for anime episodes. And my friend who lives in Japan, after he saw the movie, said that there are multiple episode 19 moments in that movie. So, again, I need a release date over here, because I think they had the producer tease us with something like that during the Crunchyroll Anime Awards last weekend, but still no release date. So some people are already starting to pirate, and I kind of look down at them because this deserves to be seen legitimately. But still,
sure. I've been out of touch with anime for a while. The last anime I got super into was Dragon Ball Super, and I basically wore that like an IV drip for 2 years. And the moment I took it out, I felt alive for the first time in a while. So I just kind of felt I needed to be away from it. Did you watch that, or did you?
Barely. I got maybe, I don't know, 30, 40 episodes in, and then just lost interest.
Yeah, it
I
gets.
I honestly think that Akira Toriyama has, had his fill of this.
Well, he didn't do Super. He just kind of was. He's working on Dragon Quest in the background, and he's like, okay, approve.
Basically.
But he did do the Broly movie, and I recommend that.
Yeah, the Broly movie was surprisingly good. I mean, it is very, very Dragon Ball Z. I'll say that much. You get what's on the package with that movie. But what's on the package, if you have an appetite for that, it's good.
I would say it's probably the second or third best written Dragon Ball thing we've ever gotten. Maybe. I mean, the fact that the first half was just like a chill hangout movie, and then the fight started, and the fight was one of the best in the series. You got two things you don't tend to get that frequently out of the show, so it's. Yeah. I was more than happy with it, and I hope they do another one of those soon, because that was just. I'm surprised they didn't rush a sequel out right away.
Yeah, I mean, that is basically an example of fan service done right, because I'm sure you remember the whole reason or motivation behind this movie is to make the character of Broly canon, finally.
Yeah.
Because when he was first introduced in that old 90s Dragon Ball Z movie, Legendary, well, Broly
It's so
Legendary
bad.
Super Saiyan, which was not very good in hindsight. It did not age very well, but the character of Broly was such a huge hit with the fans that they were, crushed at the fact that that movie was not, and the character himself was not canon. So the fact that they were willing to make a movie which makes the character of Broly canon to the Dragon Ball universe now, I'm sure that warms a lot of people, the cockles of many people's hearts. And hey, you get, like I said, you get what's on the package, but what's on the package is actually well done. So,
And he's like one of the best new characters in a long time too, which says a lot because there've been a lot of new characters recently. But like, I love the fact that they've managed to bring so much pathos out of that guy. Like,
yeah, they did.
Out of Broly. Like, that's
originally just supposed to be a mindless killing machine, but now he's actually got some depth and intrigue and, like you said, pathos to his character. Fascinating. In fact, I find myself oftentimes, whenever I watch Dragon Ball now, I constantly think to myself, like, if I had to explain this to someone who does not watch anime, how would I do it? And I constantly go back to making parallels to Superman with all of Dragon Ball now, because it is basically just Toriyama's reimagining of the Superman story. And it's like, okay, if Goku is basically Superman, Vegeta is basically General Zod, Broly, I guess you could say, is Doomsday, in a way. Just like you said, with more pathos. But
I did show someone Battle of Gods who'd never seen Dragon Ball before, and they actually got into it. So
fascinating. That one seemed more esoteric than anything.
It's a complete narrative beginning to end, so it's not completely like it does. It's not like there's no foundation to grapple onto. You can jump into it. So
yeah, I suppose.
I mean, that's the most important thing, since Dragon Ball is otherwise like terrifyingly impenetrable, unless you like dedicate like a master's degree to it. But
I guess it depends on how deep you want to get into. Like I said, it's parallels to Superman are uncanny. It's like, if you understand the basic story of Superman, you understand the basic story of Dragon Ball.
I mean, I had a friend. I got her to watch through. I had to watch the abridged series because I think that's a lot more accessible. I got her to do that, and I tried to get her to watch the Battle of God movies, the Battle of God movie, and it took her a lot of finagling, and it finally did it. And I had to sit down and explain, like, wait, who is this guy? Who's this guy? Does Goku have like a massive jaw now? Okay, Super Saiyan 3, Boo, Trunks, Goten, and she's like, oh, well, most of that's stupid. And I'm like, well, yeah, I watched it happen in the original show. It's very stupid. It's even worse to watch it play out. That's why you just...
I remember, if I recall correctly, Toriyama originally said that he wanted the whole story to end after Frieza was killed.
Every single arc was written to be the last arc, so
yeah.
That should tell you something. Like, and that goes back to Dragon Ball, like, what's his name? The shrimpy guy who's the first
Garlic
villain.
Jr.?
No, not Garlic Jr., the other one. He shows up in Battle of Gods. I'm forgetting his name.
That's not Garlic Jr.?
No, Garlic Jr. is the one who, he's from the Dead Zone movie.
Oh, right.
Pilaf. The
Yes.
the Pilaf saga in Dragon Ball at one point was going to be considered the last arc, and then they just kept writing. Then Z was supposed to be the last arc. That's why it's called Z. So the Vegeta arc was supposed to be the last arc, then the Frieza arc, then the Cell arc, and then they bribed Toriyama to do one more arc at the Buu arc, and he just did not care at all. So
obviously, you could see the lack of interest at that point. You could see he was scraping from the bottom of the barrel when you get to that point.
Good grief. So, what other things have you been working on lately for the site? I know you did the review for, like, Run, Hide, Fight. Was there anything else you've worked on?
That was the last complete review that I did right before this one, and that was an interesting undertaking, I would say. For those who don't know, it is a action thriller developed and produced by the Daily Wire, which is a very fast-growing conservative news network that is now trying to make its breach into the entertainment business. and they made it with this movie Run, Hide, Fight, which was written and directed by a group of people who are now from a defunct Texas studio whose name eludes me from the moment.
Cinestate.
Cinestate, yeah. No, that went the way of the dodo under a number of scandals. But
that's gonna bite Daily Wire in the butt at some point, but
yeah, maybe, but Run, Hide, Fight. It was really hard for me to go through the movie without thinking, teen drama Die Hard.
Good or bad? I mean,
mixed. I was ambivalent about that pitch, but I can't say that I didn't enjoy the movie. I can say, I even though I do identify myself as a member of that endangered species of the black conservative, I wasn't going to give these people the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to give them the full critical assessment like I would give to anybody else as a movie. And when I did that, it had its moments, it had its promises. It wasn't a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think it's a very memorable one, not necessarily a rewatchable one. I don't think it has any new revelations upon every single rewatch like other films I could think of. But for a standard weekend entertainment action thriller, it delivers where it counts. And it even has some flourishes that you wouldn't expect. Like, I really like the idea of how the main character's mother keeps coming to her as like this illusory specter, urging her on in times of crisis. Like, that was an interesting flourish. It was innovative. I've seen that done better in other places, but it doesn't have to be so esoteric that you're basically producing an art film at this point. But it was well done. No, I'm not going to say it wasn't.
I remember that when they did the premiere live stream on YouTube, I sent it to a lot of my friends. I was surprised how many of them came back to me and said they really didn't like it. Like, I had people that were actually like telling me that they thought it was like morally reprehensible, and I mean, I'm a little bit different, I think, in that sense, because I have a higher tolerance for like violence and exploitation cinema, just because I've been around the block. I've seen all the other Cinestate movies. I know what I was in for. Mm-hmm. I've seen much worse.
Yeah,
but
Bone Tomahawk was a lot worse than this, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, that's up in like my top 3 most like disturbing film experiences of my life. So
yeah,
and
that one took me a while to get over.
Yeah, so but I handed it out expecting it's probably gonna be violent, but it's not gonna be as bad as that. And I was surprised how many people came back and just said this is completely immorally reprehensible, and just because it doesn't. Well, part of it is people who didn't like the screenwriting. One of my friends, Ian Kirkpatrick, has did a whole video just going through the story logic and how the plot holes like there's just tons of moments where it's like, oh, the cop should have noticed this, the cop should have noticed that. The plot holes never really bothered me, but the moral complaints certainly took me off guard. People like saying it's like, oh, they're completely demonizing they're not concerned about what makes school shooters. They're just kind of using it as like a means to create like a really gross like movie villain and kind of playing it up. And my read on the film was that it was a movie about breaking down the psychology of that and kind of like embarrassing the kind of person that would want to do that. Mm-hmm. Which like if it, like this would be like a movie you could show to someone who could become a school shooter in an effort to de-radicalize them, just because it says like, oh, like you're not important, you're not a big deal, you're pathetic, like that kind of thing. Just I think that there might be an interesting read on it like that, where it's like it's about the psychology of breaking down the logic of why people do this kind of thing and basically just completely dehumanizing him and breaking it and revealing it for how pathetic it is. But
yes, you could say that. I would actually disagree with the criticism that they didn't really. The primary orchestrator of the school shooting, I think, did get the most character development, even more than the protagonist in a way. It does demonstrate that he is, at base, a publicity seeker. Someone who is just out for notoriety, which is a very authentic thing. A lot of these school shooters in actual life, they are just seeking notoriety and fame through their acts of violence. And it was a common motif in his character that the times when he got most violent is the time when his place under the spotlight was being threatened. So that, I think, was quite accurate and well done, at least as far as that goes. And I did like that there were varying motivations among the shooters as for why they were involved in this. Some guy was just basically a gun-toting goof who was along for the ride and was just seeking validation from people that he thought were his betters. Someone else was out for personal revenge against the entirety of the school society. And he actually wound up getting a redemption arc of his own in a way. I think, I wouldn't call it morally reprehensible, but I would say that it ended on a morally questionable turn, that it kind of ended in a eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth kind of morality that I was really hoping we would avoid during the runtime of this movie.
Well, the Cinestate guys, I've talked to some of the people that work there because I briefly wrote for Rebler, and I can tell you that none of them are Christian. So
Okay.
they're all nominally conservative, but they're not religious. So I think they kind of approach it with that like angry grindhouse cinema kind of attitude,
Yeah.
like the Charles Bronson, I'm gonna get justice by shooting my way out through it, and they just apply it without any sort of Christian moral virtue to the situation,
That
and
makes sense.
it comes across very nihilistic.
Yeah, I think I opened up my review comparing it to popular grindhouse titles. It definitely feels like it would belong in the bargain bin along with popular grindhouse titles of that sort.
You know,
Almost something that Quentin Tarantino would wake up in the morning to at least supervise, if not personally direct himself.
yeah, I've already seen a bunch of the Cinestate videos in the bin at Menards, so I can probably guarantee that that's going to end up there too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean the other moral thing I've heard was just that the protagonist ends up getting completely sociopathic by the end. Like
That's kind of what I was touching upon. And I can see the argument for that. I'm not too sure. I might agree with that if I reflect upon it a little bit more, but at present I don't. That's not to say I completely disagree, but I can see the arguments.
yeah, I mean if you completely detach from it and just say like, oh, she's supposed to be the moral character, like the moral representative, her basically being like going full going full Calvinist on the enemy and being like, you are beneath my contempt.
Right.
Like I could see like there could be like, oh, she's the moral arbiter of the film, but at the same time, like she's still a person. So if it coming from a non-genre movie character, it would be very, very like, oh, this girl's having like an anti-arc. She's just like, she starts out sad and gets angry and less sympathetic.
Yeah, in a way. I guess it worked in a poetic sense because the movie started off with her killing a deer and letting it bleed out, and now she's killed a school shooter and letting him bleed out. So it works in almost a poetic sense.
Well, it's for completely different reasons, though. First one, in the beginning, she doesn't want to kill the deer because she's sympathetic to the deer.
Right.
Now she purposely doesn't want to kill the killer because she has no sympathy for the killer, and she
wants him to suffer.
Yeah, he's below her contempt as a human being.
Right.
He's a slug dying on the side of the road. It's like it's. So I mean, there's some, I definitely think there's something to that criticism, but I don't know. Part of me is just like in full like exploitation cinema mode and is like, ah man, violence. But I don't know. Right. It's also hard because you kind of want to root for the Daily Wire guys and to get their first film out going good. And
yeah, I'm happy that they're doing that, and Godspeed to them in their future endeavors. I'm sure you've heard about the whole Gina Carano fiasco. And,
yeah.
Best of luck to them. I've always been ambivalent on her talent as an actress. She's gotten better over the years. I think her turn in The Mandalorian is the best that she's done thus far. And she's definitely showing that she's getting better and better in that regard with that killed before its prime. And now she's supposed to be headed to produce and star in her own production with Daily Wire. I was like, this doesn't sound like a good thing from an artistic standpoint. I mean, more power to her that she's putting her foot down and saying, I'm taking my own way in this and I'm going to cancel the cancel culture, so to speak. I can definitely stand for that in a socio-political aspect, but, you know, as a fan of just someone who loves the art of cinema that thinks it should be done justice as artwork, not just as a statement, I'm concerned.
Yeah, I don't know what her talent's going to be when she's not being used by someone else. I mean, I think part of why she works in The Mandalorian so well is that Jon Favreau very specifically wrote that film around her talent, and he's a very good writer. And so I'm curious what she's actually going to be capable of. Like I'm sure it's not going to be unwatchable or terrible or anything like that, because she's got the Syndicate guys working with her. So I'm sure she's probably going to have some oversight, and they're probably going to give her some, like,
guidance.
Yeah. Get. I don't know where they're going to take her, or what kind of story she's going to tell, but I'm sure she's not going to. They're not going to just rush it out and get it done. Although, I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to fast track this, because Daily Wire doesn't have any content at the moment. So I'm curious to see what they're actually going to end up doing and how fast, because they're striking while the iron is hot, but Gina Carano is not going to be in demand 2 years from now.
No, probably not. But best of luck to them. Yeah, I agreed. I'm definitely going to see it, and I'm excited to see what they do. I'm just concerned.
Yeah, and I'm things to be worried about. But
yeah,
what else? So, what else do you want to work on then, outside of other than the reviews you've been working on? Then, do you have anything else you want to do soon, or?
Oh man, I did remember for a while I wanted to write like a retrospective on great cartoons that I grew up on, or cartoon. I honestly don't think that there's enough talk about TV cartoons on the site. So for a while I had entertained the idea of putting together like a retrospective on classics and better articles on more current stuff. I find that when I'm writing for TV shows, it's better for me to write an article rather than a review, because I feel reviews are a little too constrained. Articles are more free form. That's why I was glad I wrote an article for 13 Reasons Why, which is honestly I think is one of my better entries as a writer for the site. Well, I wrote an article, like I said, for Big Mouth. I wrote an article for Castlevania, and those tend to be the most enjoyable writing experiences that I have, because they're more free form than the tightly knit paradigms that the reviews demand. So I was thinking of writing articles for some of the old cartoons that I watched, like Dexter's Laboratory, Powerpuff Girls, Ed, Edd n Eddy, just like looking back on those with adult eyes and seeing if they still hold up, or am I just looking at these with nostalgia goggles. And I also wanted to give a bit more of a critical look at some more recent cartoon entries. I did write one, probably my favorite film review that I had the most fun writing was the one for Teen Titans Go to the Movies. Which, much to my surprise, actually wound up trending in the top and higher topics on the website for a while. Much to my surprise, I didn't think enough people would be interested in that to give it the traffic. But I would like to give like maybe a more critical look at the actual TV show that spawned from, or The Amazing World of Gumball, which in my estimation is the best written comedy on television while it was running. And I honestly think that deserved a more in-depth treatment. And plus, the creator of the Powerpuff Girls and Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, Craig McCracken, he just recently came out with a new animated series on Netflix called Kid Cosmic. And that's definitely a lot. There's a lot to say about that in a number of directions, in his plot and his characters and his setting and his aesthetic. There's a lot to say there. So these are a lot of things that I've entertained doing. The problem, of course, is my time. I'm so choked up on training exercises and on my freelance projects and businesses that I'm looking to write something once a month these days. So that's how it's playing out for me. I'm glad for you that you have the appetite and the drive to keep writing consistently for the site. I think you write more consistently than any of us in that group. So more power to you. But that's where I'm standing at present.
Yeah, I mean, I wish. I mean, obviously we're all volunteers, so we all have lives and stuff going on. If I could change anything at the website, I wish there was a more persistent editorial direction in terms of where kind of pushing where we want the content to go, because it kind of seems like they welcome us into the site and say bring to us what you want and what you're passionate about, which that's great. We get a lot of really good content out of it, but at times it makes our output really scattershot, and it feels like on a weekly basis, we might have like one film review, 3 board game reviews, a game review, and there's no real edged direction to it.
No.
I wish there was more concerted efforts, like you're saying, to do more classic cartoon reviews or Christian content, especially negative Christian content, like First Temptation of Christ, or stuff that's like addressing stuff that's actively hostile to the Christian worldview. I think that we should be definitely tackling that, or at least even just tepidly, just acknowledging that it exists and talking about it, so that we are engaging with the conversation. I mean, my big project at the moment is doing monthly book review, monthly classics reviews. So my first one was the Iliad, which I submitted a couple weeks ago. The second one that's going to come out is going to be Fahrenheit 451. Then I'm doing That Hideous Strength, Beowulf, Thomas Jefferson's Bible, and I'm just going to keep going from there on a monthly basis and kind of get like a regular classic book out, because I think we don't have enough of that at the website. So we have a lot of contemporary stuff, and I think we should be pushing more classics or challenging stuff too. But
that's a challenge, definitely, because these are works that have been talked to death already before any of us were even born. I remember it was a rather intimidating experience for me to write the 40th anniversary review for Alien. I mean, mind you, I love that movie.
Yeah.
And I was definitely honored to be able to write the review, but at the time I was still in my 20s. Like, you want some guy in his late 20s writing a movie that came out decades before he was born, and one that people have already talked to death, even in collegiate film courses. Like, what new perspective could I possibly bring to this? But I wrote from the heart, and I'm quite satisfied with what I wrote. I haven't read too much of other people's responses to the review, but I thought it turned out all right, all things considered.
Yeah, so, I did the review for Aliens. I think didn't we do that like a series at one point?
I don't know if we did. I didn't do Aliens. I did the original.
I did Aliens, so.
You did Aliens, okay.
Because I know we did those in relative succession, because it happened around the same time, but. But yeah, I'm starting to hit that time of night where I'm running out of things to talk about. But is there anything else you want to hit up?
Good, man.
Anything else you want to hit up real quick, or you want to kind of wrap it up?
No. I think, that was a great rundown of everything that's going on currently. I think we touched upon raging Twitter topics. We talked about the Daily Wire's foolhardy, what would you say, spearhead into the culture. We discussed Dragon Ball and all that it's worth. I discussed Demon Slayer and how it's taking over Japan 1 minute at a time in incredibly rapid fashion. We talked about Goro Miyazaki and how he fails to live up to his father's wishes and expectations, and how that's going to be awkward at the holiday dinner table. We've talked on quite a few things that I'm really happy for. I have my own podcast, and they're usually not this sophisticated, because I have to run it with a couple of clowns that you don't even understand, man. So, yeah, this is definitely one of the more enjoyable podcasting experiences that I've had, at least.
Do you do it with the Geeks Under Grace crew, or do you do it with somewhere else?
I do it independently. We have our own podcast on YouTube called Temple of the Weeb, where we just talk about anime and manga and stuff. So, yeah, we just had our 10th episode last week. We talked about Attack on Titan. Basically, everything that's come thus far and how we think it's going to end. That was basically the topic of our discussion then. So
okay, everyone go check that out. I haven't had a chance to see this podcast yet, but I'll have to look into it.
Yeah, I can send you a link. Maybe you can put it in the description for this, wherever it's going to be. Or
oh, sure, I can do that. But yeah, thank you so much. I will probably talk again in the future. So
yeah, I'll look forward to it. Absolutely.
Sure. Have a good night.
You do the same. Thank you.
The AntiSocial Network is a Groupthink Productions podcast. Editing, producing, and hosting are by Tyler Hummel, artwork by Crystal Cowley, and original music was composed by Melissa Lafira and the late Dan Smolla. Like, subscribe, and please let us know what you think about the show in the comments below if you'd like to see anyone interesting be a guest on the show. Thank you for listening.